A quorum is present. And we begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Vice Chair Bjorn, would you like to start us off, please? Since this is the division's first meeting, there are no minutes to approve. We'll share the division rules at a later date, but now we will use House Rule 6.21 and custom and usage to guide the Veterans and Military Affairs Division. Before we begin our agenda, I want to remind everybody that the division expects proper decorum at all time. All dialogue goes through the chair. Signs are not allowed in the committee room. There will be no outbursts or clapping. There is no standing or sitting in walkways and aisles if accommodation is needed. Communicate with sergeant staff. There will be consequences if there is disruption. Thank you to the Sergeant at Arms staff who are present and helping maintain decorum. We'll begin our first meeting with introduction to the members. Starting over here with Ben, Representative Davis. Sorry, I got to get back into the House rules here. Please tell us your district number and communities you represent, your professional background. And staff, when it's your turn, tell us your role in the House.
Boy, that's a lot of stuff you want me to talk about. My name is Ben Davis. I represent District 6A. I am a pastor by trade, and I love our veterans. I never served myself, but I understand we have these freedoms because a lot of innocent blood was shed so that we could enjoy these freedoms. So it's an absolute honor to be on this committee. Thank you.
Chair Bliss, Aaron Rapinski, District 26A, which is Winona, Minnesota, southeast Minnesota. I am a former firefighter, dive rescue member, and an EMT, and I also serve on the health and finance and public safety boards also, and I'm excited to be on this group.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bjorn Olson. I represent 22A, which is the Fairmont Blue Earth, just south of Mankato area. Social studies teacher for a number of years. I farm back home and am a major in the United States Army Reserve currently with about 11 and change years in the military.
My name is Allie Winter. I'm the CLA for this committee, and I've been here for 3.5 years.
Good morning, John Hultquist. I'm the committee administrator. I'm also the committee administrator for the Public Safety Committee, and I've been with the House since 2011 and serving as staff for the Veterans Committee since 2017.
Bedell Duran, and I serve District 2A, and I am prior military and law enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Peggy Bennett. I represent 23A, which is southern Minnesota, or part of southern Minnesota. I live in Albert Lea. I am a teacher by trade, though retired now. I taught elementary school for 33 years, retired about 10 years ago. Loved it, taught mostly first grade. I always taught my students, even at that age, to respect our military and veterans, and I do too, and they hold a special place in my heart. So it's an honor to serve on this committee again. I was here last term and loved it. It's a great committee and a great cause. Thank you.
My name is J.R. Swanson. I am the Republican Research Consultant. I have been in the House for about 5 years, and I'm currently a lieutenant in the Minnesota Army National Guard.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm Helen Roberts from the nonpartisan House Fiscal Staff. In addition to this committee, I also staff the State Government Finance Committee and the Elections and Government Operations Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Jeff Diebel. I'm with House Research. I've staffed this committee along with Public Safety, and I'm also a member of the Army Reserve.
Thank you, everyone. I am Representative Bliss, represent District 2B. That's basically from the southern shore of Upper Red Lake down to nearly Detroit Lakes. Served in the Navy myself. My family, as far back as we can document, have all served in the military. Very rich history in my family for that. All my brothers served, most of my cousins. In the small community I grew up, that's what you did after high school. You didn't go to college. You went into the military. And I got my training in electronics and communications and went on to a nice long career in IT. I currently am a small business owner in northern Minnesota. And I am glad to be on this committee. This is, I've been here 6 years and I've been on this committee ever since I came in. So with that said, the way we've run it in the past and the way I want to continue to run it is that this is a nonpartisan committee. We leave the Rs and the Ds at the door. We do not take political amendments on our bills. We're here to serve the veterans, and that's our only charge. So I would appreciate it if everybody had the same respect for our counterparts when they finally do show up, and we'll get going with business at that time. I don't think, is there any questions on the committee that how we're gonna run it? All right, the next item on the agenda is a presentation to the divisions, divisions, the current budgets of the agencies of Veterans and Military Affairs Division's jurisdiction.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair and members. Jeff Diebel, House Research. Helen Roberts and I will provide you with an overview of the Department of Military Affairs and Veterans Affairs. We'll begin with a discussion of the Department of Military Affairs. I'll cover some of their basics, their organization, and then Helen will talk about their budget. The mission of the Department of Military Affairs is to oversee the operations of the Minnesota National Guard while it's under the jurisdiction of the governor and state control. There are about 13,000 citizen soldiers, airmen, and then civilian employees that comprise the Minnesota National Guard. While under a state jurisdiction, the Minnesota National Guard is used by the governor to assist with disaster response as well as state emergencies. When called upon by the president to serve in their federal capacity, the National Guard is a reserve component to supplement the active Army and Air Force in times of war and national emergency. The National Guard also is run by the Adjutant General, and he's the, or she, in whichever the case may be, is the executive officer of the department and the head of the agency. The department also oversees all of the military installations that are state-run within the state, and these crisscross the state. There are dozens of them, with the capstone being Camp Ripley in central Minnesota. The other big component, big component of the National Guard is the civilian workforce that supports the otherwise citizen airmen and soldiers that support it. So those are the four key parts of the Department of Military Affairs. And now Helen will discuss their budget.
Mr. Chair and members, the slide on page 4 shows you an overview of the general fund budget of the Department of Military Affairs. I do want to note up front that the majority of funding for the department comes from actual federal funds, but the general fund is what is really under the control of this committee. And you'll see that there are 4 programs under the Department of Military Affairs. The first is general support. So that is the administration of the department, but there are also other activities under general support that I know members are familiar with, including the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon program, the Cyber Coordination Cell, and a new program that was funded, I believe, in the 23 session, the Holistic Health and Fitness Program. And then you'll see I've also just noted 2 projects that were funded in the 24-25 biennium one-time funding, but that were significant funding that makes the 24-25 biennium funding look large in comparison to the base, and that is funding for the new Minnesota Military and Veterans Museum, and then also the Army Combat Fitness Test Field House. The second program is the maintenance of the military and training facilities across the state. And in addition to this general fund from the state, there are significant federal funds that flow into this program, and so that's, when you combine with the federal funding, the largest program for DMA. The next program is enlistment incentives. That includes both the tuition reimbursement program and then some other bonus programs that are intended to boost recruitment and retention. And then the final program is the Emergency Services Program. This is what we call an open appropriation. So the amount needed is appropriated to the Adjutant General, and this program is used when the National Guard is called to duty by the governor for state active duty. In general, that's usually used in the case of natural disasters like firefighting or floods. Also has been used for missing persons searches. But members will also remember this program was used significantly in 2020 for both response to COVID, when the Guard was called to duty to serve in certain care facilities, and then also to respond to the civil unrest.
Mr. Chair and members, moving on to the Department of Veterans Affairs, the second agency under the jurisdiction of this committee. The mission of the department is to serve Minnesota veterans, their dependents, and survivors by connecting them with federal and state care and benefits that they're entitled to receive. There are 4 key responsibilities that the agency has. The first is to operate the state's 8 veterans homes, which are located in Bemidji, Fergus Falls, Hastings, Laverne, Minneapolis, Montevideo, Preston, and Silver Bay. In those facilities, there are currently about 700 residents throughout the 8 state veteran homes. A second key function of the agency is to operate the state's 4 veterans cemeteries. These are in addition to Fort Snelling, and these are located at, which is a federal facility, and the state cemeteries are located in Duluth, Little Falls, Preston, and Redwood Falls. And there are approximately 13,000 veterans and their dependents laid to rest in these state veteran cemeteries. The third key function of the agency is to assist the over 300,000 Minnesota veterans and their dependents in securing the benefits and services provided by the federal government through the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And they work in conjunction with our county VSOs, Veteran Service Officers, and help train them to do outreach with our veterans to make sure that they're getting their disability and other benefits that they're entitled to receive. Fourth key function of the Department of Veterans Affairs is to administer the state-funded veterans benefit programs, which include the State Soldiers Assistance Program, which provides financial assistance to veterans in need, as well as the Minnesota GI Bill, which is the education benefits that airmen and soldiers, as well as veterans, are entitled to under state law. And also the agency administers the post 9/11 Veteran Service Bonus, which is made available to those who have served after 9/11 in certain combat operations. And now Helen will discuss the agency's budget.
Members, this next chart provides a general fund overview of the Department of Veterans Affairs. And you'll see that they have 2 main programs. The first is Programs and Services, and that covers some of the things that Mr. Diebold just discussed. And then also the Veterans Healthcare, which is where the veterans' homes are funded. And you'll see that the Veterans Healthcare program is the largest by far for the department. It's about 75% of the department's funding when you include all sources. In addition to the general fund appropriation from the state, there are funds that come from the federal government in terms of VA per diem. There are also residence maintenance charges, Medicare payments, and other reimbursements that all go in to fund the veterans' homes. And then at the bottom, you'll see that there is an open appropriation for the GI Bill. That's both the higher education benefits, on-the-job training, and apprenticeship programs. Moving on to the next page, then I'm going to go back to the Programs and Services program, which again is the smaller of the programs but covers a variety of activities. And the next 3 slides all cover what the various activities are beneath that program. I'm not going to read them line by line, and they are sorted just in terms of the largest amount of funding to the least in terms of the 24-25 biennium. So you'll see some of the things that Mr. Diebold mentioned, the veterans bonus for post 9/11 vets, the state soldiers assistance program, the veteran cemeteries, et cetera. You'll see throughout this that there are a variety of activities that are related to housing and homelessness, including the MACV permanent supportive housing, and the homelessness initiative. Those are all on the first page. On the second, continuing that chart, you'll again see some programs related to housing, including the tenancy and landlord support and another MACV program. And then you'll see also some, what I would call member or legislative proposals and activities that have been funded by this committee. That includes a one-time grant for the Metro Meals on Wheels, the Veterans Resilience Project, Veterans Camp Bliss, and then on the last page, the Every Third Saturday grant and Veterans on the Lake. So those are some various programs that have been supported and have originated in this committee. If you have questions on any of these activities, let me know and I can get you further detail. The next slide, I just also wanted to mention, in addition to the general fund funding that you've seen in those two charts, both DMA and Veterans Affairs receive funding for the Support Our Troops license plates. The funding is divided evenly between the two agencies, and both agencies provide annual reports. I have links to the 2024 reports. It's possible that there's a more recent one that has been delivered to the legislature in the last week, and we can either find that or wait for it to arrive. But those reports will give you the detail on how each department spent its portion of the Support Our Troops funds. And then the final slide is just a wrap-up, again, a summary of the funding for the division. The two, you can see the breakdown between both Military Affairs and Department of Veterans Affairs. And for returning members and new members, you'll know that this general fund amount is what we call, when you see the 2627 figure, is the base. And so that's really going to be sort of the starting point for discussions about targets, because that's the amount that's in the November forecast now. Whatever target is arrived may be different from this, but I just wanted to give this so that you have an idea of where you're starting from.
Thank you. Before we go to any member questions, staff has prepared a one-page list of programs that we fund through this committee. Some of these programs are administered by the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. Others are just outside organization and money passes through the MDVA. And I thought it was important that we have these this list here so you can do some research on these programs, look into them. We'll be reviewing our budgets this year, so it's good to have a good idea of what we're spending the money on. So is there any member questions right now? All right. Thank you for nonpartisan staff for giving the division a primer on the agencies and budgets. The Veterans and Military Affairs Division will be overseeing this biennium. Next on our agenda is the Commander's Task Force. The umbrella group is comprised of the congressionally chartered veterans organizations in Minnesota. Testifying today will be Trent Dilks, Legislative Director for Disabled American Veterans, Minnesota Chapter. And welcome to the division, Mr. Dilks. Please begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. I'm Trent Dilks, the Legislative Director for the DAV Minnesota. By way of introduction, this is my 10th year representing Minnesota's disabled vets here in St. Paul. I've worked for the DAV for 11 years. I'm a two-tour Iraq veteran. I also serve on our National Legislative Committee. So for the last 5 years, the National Commanders of the DAV have appointed me to work with our team out at DC. And yeah, so it's good to be back in my 10th year when I thought I had seen it all. Here we are, seeing something new. So at least it's lively and different. So we got that going for us. I'm going to do an overview of the CTF legislative agenda and a brief overview of the CTF itself. Real quick, the CTF, Commander's Task Force, is made up of the congressionally chartered service organizations, and it was done so to try to come up with a unified legislative agenda. Instead of everybody coming with slightly different asks and things like that, all organizations still have the right to do that, they always do, but the things I'll present to you today are 100% unanimous. So we have a policy in the Commander's Task Force that if any organization opposes for any reason, we will pull it from our agenda. So there's no majority rule, there's no, okay, it passed, so now my organization is attached to that. This is 100% unanimous by the organizations that make up the Commander's Task Force. Real briefly, we'll go over those. We've got the American Legion. Also, the chair of the Commander's Task Force this year is their department commander, Dr. Carl Moon. The American Legion is the largest service organization here in Minnesota. I'm willing to guess that all of you have an American Legion somewhere in your districts, if not several, as well as some VFWs, which is going to be the next slide here. There's more detail here. You all have a copy of the presentation. I'm not going to read it line by line, but we'll just go over it real quick so you know who's in it. The Veterans of Foreign Wars, Department of Minnesota is a member, State Commander David Stalin. Go ahead. We'll cruise through this part. The most important organization, the Disabled American Veterans. Arthur Martin is our commander this year. Jewish War Veterans of the United States, Department of Minnesota, with Stuart Mednick as their commander. The Military Order of the Purple Heart with David Bellis. AMVETS with John Flores. The Marine Corps League with Commandant Andrew McCormick. And the Paralyzed Veterans of America with their president, Vicki Garrison. CTF partners closely with the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs and the Minnesota Association of County Veteran Service Officers. We do hear their input. It's important to note, though, we are independent. There are times where our views and what we support are in opposition with the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. Our funding priorities may be different, so we do operate independent, but closely work with them since they're in the veterans realm. All right, now the meat of it. The legislative priorities for 2025. Again, these were unanimously passed by all those organizations I just mentioned. Priority one, the continuation of the separate Veterans Omnibus Bill. So if how many were around 4 years ago, this would be the fourth Veterans Omnibus Bill. But the circumstances that were surrounding that were a session where it looked like, and it turned out not much got done. Partisanship was again at an all-time high. The ability to get bills through the finish line was not going to materialize. At Veterans Day on the Hill, the combined service organizations and nearly 1,000 veterans called for the first passage of a Veterans Omnibus Bill, Veterans and Military Affairs Omnibus Bill here in Minnesota. It worked. It was late in the session. Some rules had to be suspended, but it worked. It received only one nay vote in the House. The representative still won't return my calls, but never did find out why the one nay, but it was nearly unanimous here. It has been unanimous in out of the three of them. One of them was unanimous. At overwhelming support in the Minnesota Senate as well. And so it accomplished its mission. The landscape prior to a Veterans Omnibus Bill was veterans being stuck in a lot of different bills and where actual partisan issues are put. We understand the nature of that. We understand the nature of representing those who elected you. It was not a vote against veterans. It was a vote against various bills and various priorities. And over the decade that I've been here, we had seen both parties do it. It was just kind of the way to operate all the way up until 4 years ago. So it was refreshing to see for the first time that we could pull out veterans issues, as the chair had mentioned earlier, demonstrate the nonpartisanship of this and receive a nearly unanimous vote. And as I noted, one of the votes was unanimous in the House. So that's been refreshing. We encourage the continuation of that. I don't have a crystal ball, but this might be another partisan year here where we're struggling to get things through the finish line. But it sure would be nice to see a little bit of light during all of that, and that's a unanimous vote on a Veterans Omnibus Bill. So, Mr. Chair, I hope that can be a vehicle for this committee to move forward with. Priority 2, hunting, fishing, trapping for veterans. This one has been on the CTF agenda for as long as I have been here, and this is the most well-developed we've ever had this. When we take a look around states that are, we consider outdoorsy, Colorado, Texas, Montana, states like that, we see a lot better benefits for disabled veterans. When I went down to Texas, if you're 50% or greater, you go into Texas, whether you're a resident or not, you present your documentation stating that you're 50% or greater, and they give you a free deluxe license. I don't know what all I could have done, but I think I could have shot 7 deer, 5 turkey, some fish I've never heard of. It came out with all of these tags. Other states do this and have a system in place to encourage their disabled veterans to get back into the outdoors. We have seen it as an organization, the DAV. We have an outdoor hunting and fishing program. We've added hiking and things like that. But the healing nature of returning veterans to the outdoor is something that we really see demonstrated over and over. So if we can lower the barriers for that while showing our appreciation to disabled veterans, it's something we strongly support. The model that we have put forward, I'm calling the Minnesota model. No one else does it quite like this. We have called for leaving a $5 fee in place. And that allows for over $19 in the federal excise tax to come back to the state of Minnesota. There's not a single veteran I've talked to who isn't willing to put down their $5 to get 19 federal dollars back into the state for the DNR and for outdoors. So we do leave in place that small fee that makes sure that they're counted as paid licenses. We are asking for 50% or greater. Work closely with the DNR. I do know that the governor has put this into his budget proposal through the DNR and through the Department of Veterans Affairs. There was a lot of back and forth. It was a little bit of a struggle to get it in there. I was glad to see that it was included. We're talking about over 40,000 disabled veterans in the state of Minnesota that are 50% or greater. And when I worked on the numbers with the DNR, they accidentally included me in their emails, and we were talking around somewhere about $300,000 for a fiscal impact. Something that a budget as large as theirs, they felt that they could absorb, and we were able to move forward with it. Hopefully we can get some support for that. The benefits to getting our veterans out hunting and fishing. The one part that was not on there that we would be interested in looking for somebody if they were willing to take a look at carrying would be, we would like to see Minnesota recognize all veterans. And a way to do that would be, whether it was some of the hunting and fishing or specific ones, but to give veterans from any state the in-state rate. So right now, the one I described with the $5 license, that's for residents only. But to give out-of-state veterans, because when they served all of the United States, the option to come in and buy a fishing license for the in-state rate, I think would be a wonderful way for the state of Minnesota to recognize. In discussions with the DNR, they called it nominal, the amount that would adjust. They couldn't come up with a number, but they thought it would be very small. But I think it would be a wonderful way for the state of Minnesota, again, to demonstrate our appreciation for the service of all. This one's near and dear to my heart. I have become known as the property tax guy. We have been working on this so long that that's the one topic I'm kind of known about as I travel the state of Minnesota. We've done some wonderful work on it over the last 7 years, including increasing it so that all surviving spouses who get dependency and indemnity compensation, which is if your service member is 100% permanent in total or dies as a result of their service-connected illness. So basically, if they had died as a result of their service, we're able to expand that. We've been able to clean up some language, make it transferable. So we've had some good work. The one thing we haven't been able to do is, I believe we're at 14 years without adjusting the cap. It has been at the current rates, 150 and 300,000 since its inception. I don't know about you all, but my property values and property taxes have skyrocketed. When I started, this was a problem that I set aside. I would get 1 or 2 calls from people who said, hey, 300,000 is not enough. And I would kind of be like, okay, I look at the state medium value for homes and be like, okay, this is the exception. Now 3 out of 4 calls that I get are from veterans who are scared. They're on a fixed income. They're receiving their benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs. It is not keeping up with the cost of living. I had a veteran here in the metro call me. He bought a house with his spouse right near the VA after he got back from Vietnam. He has been 100% permanently totally disabled since the day he came home from Vietnam. The illnesses from Agent Orange are catching up with him. He is now facing a situation where he's going to pass away from some of those. He's worried about his spouse, what has happened to his home values. And just from having bought that house back in 1971 till now, while being on a fixed income that entire time, while his spouse has become his primary caregiver, uncompensated by the VA, has just put so much strain on him. And when he called me, he wasn't worried about him. He was worried that in the near future he will pass away and that cap will continue, and he doesn't know how his surviving spouse at that point will be able to survive. This has gone from 1 or 2 calls to people who had houses that were way above the median home value to calls of people who are really scared they're not going to be able to afford their home and they don't know where they can go once they can't. So this has gone up to our urgent priority. This needs to be addressed. There is a lot of fear from all over the state of Minnesota. The things that I would note about this is we do hear some of the kickback, obviously. I've been working on this issue for a long time as well. When I look at the numbers, a lot of it comes from greater Minnesota with concerns about what they would consider an unfunded mandate, what we all know as a property tax shift. When we added all DIC members, we did 1/100% property tax shift when the House research came up with the numbers. We're not talking about a significant shift. Representative Olson, during your floor speech, which thank you very much, I haven't had a chance to see you since then, you eloquently put it, you had wonderful numbers in there. This is very, very few. And then I'm digging into the numbers of greater Minnesota, and I look forward to presenting those at a later time. But the concerns from the smaller rural counties don't add up for the amount of noise they make. And how I mean that is the property tax shift and the median home value is currently below the capped level. And so if you take the percentage of severely disabled veterans that own a home above the median value in some rural counties over 100,000, we're talking about such a minuscule number. So to keep this easy to administer, raising the cap is the way to do it because we don't want our assessors having to go home value, median value by county. But the impact on the rural counties will not be significant. We're talking about 1 or 2 homes that are over $100,000 beyond the median home value in their county and owned by a severely disabled veteran. Keep in mind that it's only the 10 acres around the homestead, so we're not talking about the large agricultural properties that veterans may own, just the homestead itself. So some of those concerns, while I understand them and counties do not like it when we do anything that can touch their revenue, I think are blown a little bit out of proportion when we look into the numbers, the median home values, and the amount of disabled veterans. The largest impact would be in the metro counties, who have been at least standoff, if not supportive of having an increase because they could easily absorb it. So to continue to hold this up, when we dig into the numbers, I hope we can get past that. We are asking the consideration of fixing it to a inflation, and it's a special number through the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. This was something that former Chair Newton had come up with. It addresses just property tax inflation from local governments. What that would do is make sure that we don't have to be back here. What I'd really like to do, a committee, is never talk about property tax again. It is not the field I got into, it's just what's most majorly impacting our veterans right now. There's some other language that needs to be cleaned up. You end up with the word honorable discharge in there. And assessors find themselves with 100% or 80%, whatever, disabled veterans, but they can't find the language honorable. And what's happened is the VA does an administrative review for the purpose of benefits, and they grant the benefits. These are veterans that, military sexual trauma, who were kicked out because they had displayed behaviors that the military found as a justification for release. Those who were kicked out by don't ask, don't tell. Those who were kicked out with severe post-traumatic stress and some of those things. Later, the Army Board of Corrections and military boards of corrections can upgrade those, but they're the lowest possible priority because you're out. So they're never gonna get moved to the front of the line. So what happens is the VA does an administrative review and they say, for the purposes of benefits, your discharge was honorable. And then you were able to receive VA disability, GI Bill, all of these things. but it's not lining up, and we have assessors trying to figure out why, for the purpose of VA benefits, it's honorable, why it may be general on the discharge documents, why there's a pending case for 10 years in front of the military boards of corrections to try to upgrade the nature of discharge. There are federal laws that require it, but the boards are very slow. We'd like to just simplify it. If the VA has deemed your discharge eligible for benefits, which is what we're using as the measure, 70 to 100% here, let's go ahead, simplify it, not ask assessors to go through a stack of documents to try to figure out why there's a discrepancy between two different sets of paperwork. We're using level of disability. If they have a level of disability, they have been considered honorable. For the surviving spouses, I was in the room when we came up with the language equal or lesser value, one-time transfer. It has not worked. You end up with surviving spouses moving from one county to the other. That was the intention, was to allow them to move closer to family, maintain their benefit, to allow them to put a larger family home back on the market. But the equal or lesser value ends up creating just an administrative nightmare. You take a St. Louis County home and the tax assessed value for there, you try to go as a surviving spouse to apply for the new one in wherever county, and they're trying to compare the two and draw it, and it's just really not worked. Our stance is they've become eligible for the benefit. Let's clean it up, just strike that language of equal or lesser value, give the surviving spouses the benefit that they have earned through their service, which is a decision made by the House, I think 6 or 7 years ago. And let's just clean that one up. So that has not worked as intended, and I'd like to see that one corrected as well, so we can streamline that, make it easier for assessors, and easier, most importantly, for surviving spouses. I am going to leave the next one for Christy to address because it has carryover between MAC VSO and the Minnesota Claim Shark Bill. And then, last one, food insecurity, priority number 5. When the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs conducted a comprehensive study about concerns and worries about from Minnesota veterans, from their partners, et cetera, the number one response was food insecurity. For all the reasons that people are concerned about being able to stay under their homes, they're experiencing food insecurity. We have a proposal working with Lutheran Social Services that would deliver high-quality meals directly to the veterans' homes, targeted specifically to Greater Minnesota. I grew up in a small town, and I know the barrier that is created when it is the only church in town, and it is the local ladies who gossip all day around town that run it every third Tuesday of the month, that stops families in need and stops veterans in need from going there and letting everybody know they have a dire need for food. Veterans particularly would rather go hungry and miss meals than let everybody in their small town know that they need that help. The Lutheran Social Services program is a lot like the meals that you see advertised on TV, where it is a high-quality meal delivered directly to the doorstep. You get the week's supply of meals. Nobody will know whether you're paying, an ungodly amount of money a month for those as a subscription, or that you're getting them to help you get past. We really like the LSS program because they also offer the wraparound services. Ideally, we want veterans to get to a place where they don't need that support. We don't want to serve them meals forever. Lutheran Social Services has the wraparound support for budgeting, finance, education, things like that, that will allow them to move back towards independence. So it's not like one of these programs that's just going to be open-ended and continue to serve the same people while building the roles so they can come back and ask for more money. We want them to get fed when they need it, gain their independence back, and then be able to continue with food security. So that's a wonderful program. We worked with Lutheran Social Services, Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs, took their input, and came up with, if we could get $500,000 per year, we could spread fresh, high-quality meals specifically targeting Greater Minnesota. There are a lot of services here in the metro. It's not to say that it's not an issue, but when we look at Greater Minnesota, it is something that we would like to really focus in on. That is the end of my presentation, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Before we get to questions, I did have an oversight earlier in introductions. I just want to mention that we have a retired Air Force Colonel, Representative Tom Sexton, in the room, so I just wanted to thank him for his service and acknowledge his being here. Are there any member questions? I do have a couple if we need to. On the hunting and fishing, excuse me, are we looking at a sportsman's license or just a hunting license and just a fishing license, or what's?
Yeah, and we've left that open-ended, and I should have mentioned this. The reason to get this done is because they're building that new licensing system. We propose that it's delayed until the new licensing system comes out next year. So we don't want them to implement one and then implement another. They're building it right now. If we wait 2 years to get this done, they're gonna ask for IT money, and IT money is ridiculous money. They can already do it with the money there, with the IT bill going on. We have left it open to them with the guidance that it's hunting and fishing. So if administratively the sportsman license is easier, which I imagine it would be, then that would be the one that they would be able to collect.
You're optimistic. You were saying $5, but in your overhead it says 3. Is it,
Yeah, 5 came out to be the number. We're using a
Okay.
placeholder.
all right. I did want to mention, you brought up the Veterans Homestead Tax. We do have that scheduled for hearing next week. I did ask Representative Knutson to reach out to you. Has she done so?
Mr. Chair, no, she hasn't yet.
I'll make sure she does. So that, she asked who she should get to testify, and I suggested you, so. I think that was all I had. Anybody else, no other questions? All right, after that, Christy I'm not even gonna try. Christy J. Oh, Janungo. I'll let you
Close
pronounce it. She's the chair of the MAC VSO. Welcome to the division, Miss J. Could you please pronounce your name for me?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's Janigo.
Janigo, thank
Yeah.
you.
So, Mr. Chair and members, thanks for having us. I am the American Legion Department of Minnesota Legislative Chair, as well as the Minnesota Association of County Veteran Service Officers Legislative Chair. So you will see me wearing different hats from time to time. Today, I'm in the MAC VSO hat. So a little bit of history about our organization. In 1943, County Veteran Service Officers were established by Minnesota Statute 197, 447. And in 1945, the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs and County Veteran Service Officers came together to form the MAC VSO. It was officially registered as a nonprofit in 1987, and in 2015 registered as a 501c4. So the early partnership, most of the first CVSOs around the 1948 was World War I era. Some were combat wounded or gassed and recalled their own struggles seeking benefits and specialized care for after the war. These newly appointed CVSOs, along with MDVA, which was formed in 1945, came together to develop standardized procedures for CVSOs and began what has become a 75-year relationship with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, or the USDVA, and other partners for the benefit of our veterans. And the organization was called the Minnesota Association of County Veteran Service Officers. This is a photo of our organization from 2021. It looks like this would be at Grandview from one of our fall meetings. So MAC VSO is governed by an executive board, which is elected each year at the organization's annual meeting in the fall, which would look something like that. And we organize training for its members twice a year in the spring and the fall. And that training makes sure that we know the latest about federal veteran benefits, state veteran benefits, and anything available in the nonprofit community as well. So our mission is to train and educate Minnesota Veteran Service Officers across our 87 counties, positively impact legislative decisions, and establish, maintain, or enhance relationships with stakeholders. And our vision is to be the premier support organization for all 87 county officers and staff. And our website is macvso.org. It also has a great feature on there to find your county veteran service officer if you need to connect a constituent with someone to get them help. So we talked about the statewide training, the advocacy, education for CVSOs. We also do a lot in the way of onboarding and mentoring new CVSOs and Assistant County Veteran Service Officers. You can't go to school for this. I certainly didn't. What qualifies you to work in this role is to meet the statutory definition of a veteran. I have a DD 214. I am a third generation Army soldier, and that's what makes me qualified to work on this. We also do wellness and resiliency among our members. There's a tremendous amount of secondary trauma that our people face, hearing and repeating the stories of people's combat, other traumas that occurred to them in service, and the pursuit of federal, state, and nonprofit benefits to help improve their lives. We also administer technical assistance, which I'll get into a little bit down the road here. We also have help from our national organizations. So we are MAC VSO. There is a NAC VSO, or a National Association of County Veteran Service Officers. That was formed in 1991, and 36 states have CVSOs and belong to this organization. So at the national level, we do go to training. Last year we were in Denver, and they have a national legislative advocacy for veterans and the profession. So they have their own legislative platform too. Kind of fun fact, NAC VSO leadership is a MAC VSO. So Chris Hinton from Waseca County, the CVSO there, is the current national president. We are locally funded by counties, so each county funds the work of a county veteran service officer and their support staff and assistant county veteran service officers. And under state statute, each county is required to employ a CVSO. I mentioned the veteran status, and this picture is from the state fair where we did some outreach with Minnesotans stopping by the education building, along with the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. I think we've already gone over the mission. You can see here the areas that we mainly work in. So generally, a county veteran service officer's bread and butter is going to be federal VA disability compensation. We do work some health administration issues and some cemetery administration issues. Initial VHA eligibility, NCA eligibility for burial in a national cemetery, and some of the honors and things that come along with burial. We do work, you heard about the State Soldiers Assistance Program earlier. That's under the umbrella of the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. We also assist veterans with making their initial application to a Minnesota Veterans Home. I personally am actually working very solidly in the homeless and justice-involved veterans space. So a lot of those programs that were mentioned earlier about homeless veterans and the state funding for it, we're the ones who are on the ground in the streets carrying out that work along with our state partners. You may have heard in the news recently that Hennepin County reached an effective end to veteran homelessness. It's a huge accomplishment. It's one of the largest counties in the union that we're aware of that has reached this milestone. We think that puts us on track to end veteran homelessness in the state of Minnesota with only Ramsey County remaining. So what we're doing is working, and we would look for your continued support on these efforts. Okay, just gonna skip forward a bit. I think we've talked about a lot of this. Now I'm gonna talk about the MAC VSO legislative platform, and you do have in your materials a separate platform piece that is MAC VSO. It's a little bit longer than the Commander's Task Force platform. We do support the Commander's Task Force platform and share a lot of priorities in common. And then we also have a shared priority with the American Legion, which is eliminating the charges for vehicle registration for Gold Star spouses. So we do have language for that bill and would love to see that get done. We do have several unique priorities for MAC VSO. Technical assistance coordinator funding, state offset for the property tax benefit, and data sharing between the County Veteran Service Officer and the Assessor's Office, and then removing penalties for veterans unjustly charged for veteran benefits presentations. So the last two bullet points are what I would consider really technical bills, and you'll see what I mean. There's a certain one of your colleagues in the House who calls these boring bills. We do love our boring bills. They do make our lives a lot easier. Okay, so a little bit more about the technical assistance coordinators. MACVSO has 3 technical assistance coordinators. I happen to be the Justice Involved Veterans Technical Assistance Coordinator. I do work the 4th District Veterans Treatment Court. That is the oldest court in Minnesota, Veterans Treatment Court, and it is the biggest by far. Our population of Justice Involved veterans is at any given time 2 to 3 times as large as the next largest county, which I would guess is the Ramsey County Veterans Treatment Court. So we deal with a high volume of veterans. We do a great job wrapping them with supports available to veterans, again, at the state, federal, and nonprofit level to help them. We also have a suicide prevention technical assistance coordinator and a women veterans technical assistance coordinator. So we have these because these are all very challenging and specialized areas to serve. And the 3 of us are tasked with helping our colleagues in all 87 counties to know how to deal with these type of veteran benefits issues. So our ask is $20,000 for each technical assistance coordinator, a total of $60,000 on an annual basis. And we have positioned that hopefully to increase the grant to county veteran service officers to MACVSO each year. Oh, sorry, so I skipped ahead. Yep, so $60,000 total, $20,000 for each of those, and that would be to fund training for each of the technical assistance coordinators and travel to get them out to the various counterparts that they need to work with. MACVSO is asking for a state offset for the property tax benefit. I don't have language available for you here. It's being worked on in a specific county. I believe it's Fillmore County that's working with their representative. So we're looking for the state to reimburse counties up to 25 cents on the dollar to deal with some of what Trent was mentioning is being seen in the rural areas. Data sharing between the County Veteran Service Officer and the Assessor's Office. You can see here it's a very short change. The language here is in red and underlined. Simply adding the permissive language to allow the Assessor's Office to share data back with the CVSO to be able to work with a veteran on a property tax related issue. We have seen some of our colleagues get kind of a roadblock put up with the county assessor not wanting to share information back. So it's very difficult when that happens, and we believe is not in line with the spirit of the law. There are different parts where this is addressed. The assessors have their own chapter as well, but we think adding this clause might make things a little bit more smooth. Our last one here, we think that striking these 4 words here, it has to do with the unlawful payment of fees, where the statute kind of insinuates that a person who did pay fees that were unlawful to a government service officer would get a misdemeanor. So we think that's not right, and striking this language would help out. Now, there's one thing I want to circle back to, and that's the Claim Shark bill, because that is a CTF priority. It is also a priority of the American Legion, and it really originated with the MACVSO. So we're seeing a huge proliferation of parties advertising their services to advise veterans on VA benefits claims. Some of these parties aren't accredited with the VA, and they charge very steep fees for their services, which causes financial hardship to veterans in need. So we've seen sometimes these agents will take all of a veteran's back pay. So from the time that they put in their intent to file to when their claim was adjudicated, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs will pay back to that date. So these, what we call claim sharks, will take that money. Other sharks will take a percentage of their VA benefits forevermore. So if you think about the life of the veteran, that is a lot of money over time. So we would like to see this unjust practice cease. This specific bill deals with the Disclosure Act, and it is adding a some language to specify that VA accreditation needs to be had in order for these agents to work with a veteran on their benefits matters. So that's what we're asking for. Again, I mentioned I didn't go to school to become a CVSO because you can't. We take what's called accreditation training. So they're basically like on-the-job training modules that the VA itself offers. Like I said, our state offers them and our national organization offers them. So I carry 5 major accreditations at any given time to help a veteran with their VA benefits. So we feel what we're asking is not too much. We're not asking someone to get a law degree. We just want them to get their accreditation registered with the VA Office of General Counsel. So those are the main components of this, this Claim Shark bill. Again, expanding the Disclosure Act to add the accreditation piece. So it looks like that's the end of my presentation, and I would take any questions.
Are there any member questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Janico. I'll remember the name from now on.
Thank you.
And we have one more thing to cover that Mr. Dilks would like to discuss, the Veterans Day on the Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. One alibi. Veterans Day on the Hill. For those of you not familiar, this is the day that the veterans from across Minnesota will come here and really push for our legislative priorities. Every year, I've been the primary organizer for 7 years. I have made this offer. If we can get all of the veterans' work done prior to then, we will shift it to a celebration, and I would be happy to do that. So that will be April 9th. April 9th will be Veterans Day on the Hill. First, we have a free lunch over at the St. Paul Armory. Everybody is welcome to come over there. Last year, we stopped the clicker counter at just over 1,000. We had over 1,000 veterans come, mostly from greater Minnesota. We see a higher turnout from people that are 100+ miles away than we do from people who are within 20 miles. So a large turnout. The DAV of Minnesota will be funding half of the price of buses from anywhere in Minnesota. We had 14 that we helped fund half of. We had over 20 coach buses show up last year for this event. So the Armory was standing room only. The Rotunda was absolutely packed. After we have the free lunch there, excuse me, and presentation, we will march right down the, I guess I'm in the Capitol, right down the front walk of the Capitol from the Veteran Services Building up the steps. If you haven't seen that, it's quite the sight to see over 1,000 veterans walking up those steps. We'll gather in the Rotunda at 1:30 on April 9th, and we'll have a nice rally there, some speeches from those involved with veterans. And then throughout the day, I'm encouraging those who show up to meet with you. We are offering, I mean, you're in the Centennial now, so it's a short walk, but we are offering a shuttle bus from the Armory all morning long over to the Senate office to wherever they need to come to meet. So we'll be running the rounds. We're giving them box lunches this year, I believe. So encouraging them to bring you lunch and sit down and talk about veterans issues. So just, if you can note on your calendars, April 9th, I'm hopeful that a lot of veterans will be contacting to see if they can meet with you. We have had some lawmakers that if they have a larger group, maybe set aside a room, bring the lunch with them, meet there. So you can also spread the word back in your districts that if there are people who are interested coming up, seeing what you're doing here, the DAV of Minnesota is offering to pay half the cost of a bus so that they can all come up here, see the great work that's going on, and hopefully celebrate some of the early wins for veterans that'll have come out by then. So all the information is on there. If you have any questions, this is again Commander's Task Force and MAC VSO that combine for this. So yeah, it'll be a great event. I'm expecting the largest turnout ever, and last year was the largest turnout ever. So it's been growing every single year. Great chance to see some of your constituents here at the Capitol.
Thank you, Mr. Dilks. Any questions? I do want to make a comment on the Veterans Day on the Hill. It's a great event. The Rotunda fills up absolutely. It's amazing. You go in there and to walk around and just talk to these folks. There's some great American heroes in that room. Don't want to find out if our favorite guy is still going to be there, but you know, there's there is a World War II veteran, at least one. The Korean vets, and we are losing them way too fast. So if you get a chance, stop by the Rotunda and meet some of those folks. It's an amazing experience.
If I may, Mr. Chair, if you haven't had the Rotunda Shake from 1,000 veterans reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, if that doesn't give you goosebumps, you know what, I don't know what will, because that is amazing. The entire Rotunda Shakes, they really put their booming voices into it, and over 1,000 veterans saying the pledge in there is just, it's something you gotta experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing else left on the agenda. The next meeting of the House Veterans and Military Affairs Division will be Wednesday, January 29th, 2025 at 8:15 a.m. There being no further business before the division today, this meeting is adjourned.